On a cold winter night, a black diner owner drowning in debt unexpectedly meets a frail white woman abandoned by her son. He offers her a warm bowl of soup and fresh bread in his small diner. Learning about her difficult situation, he lets her stay temporarily inside the diner. As the diner begins to improve, their fragile peace is shattered by ruthless debt collectors. But just when all seems lost, the woman steps forward and repays his kindness in a surprising way. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Marcus wiped down the counter one last time, the rag rough against his calloused hands. The diner, the little flame, was his entire world. A dream he'd painstakingly built with his own 2 hands from the ground up after he was orphaned. Every brick, every table, held the silent echoes of his youthful ambition and the relentless labor he'd poured into making it a reality. Now, it sat quiet under the flickering neon sign, its once bright glow a weary pulse against the night. Booths stood empty, their cracked vinyl catching the faint glow of overhead lights. The smell of stale coffee clung to the air, mingling with the faint scent of rain-damp pavement drifting in through the slightly ajar door. Business had been painfully slow for weeks. The neighborhood itself was fading. Factories had shuttered, jobs had disappeared, and the few who still came by were mostly regulars Marcus knew well. These familiar faces didn't come for a feast anymore. They ordered just a cup of coffee or a small plate. Marcus didn't mind. He often slipped a little extra on their trays or waved off the price when he recognized the strain behind their smiles. It wasn't charity, not really. It was a quiet habit, a gesture passed down from his grandmother, a woman who believed kindness was the real currency in life. His eyes drifted to the worn cash register, nearly empty except for a few crumpled bills. Fatigue weighed heavily on him, but beneath the exhaustion, a stubborn flame refused to die out. The unpaid bills stacked on his mind like heavy stones, threatening to crush the fragile peace he clung to. The debt, a crushing burden that overshadowed everything, wasn't just due to slow business. Years ago, when his beloved grandmother, the heart and soul of this diner, fell gravely ill, Marcus had taken out a high-interest loan to cover her astronomical medical bills. He'd poured every penny into her care, hoping to save her. He'd been chipping away at the loan ever since, but the original sum, coupled with exorbitant interest, and now the ruthless tactics of the debt collectors, made it feel insurmountable. Just yesterday, one had smirked at him, his words laced with menace about deadlines and consequences for a service fee that had inexplicably ballooned tenfold overnight, despite Marcus having paid it just weeks prior. It was a clear shakedown, a fabricated excuse to bleed him dry, and Marcus was utterly powerless to fight it. Marcus sighed and buttoned up his faded, patched jacket, a small armor against a world that seemed eager to wear him down. He stepped outside, the cold air biting through his thin layers, and his breath puffed out in little clouds. For a moment he stood still, feeling the weight of loneliness settle around him. He missed his grandmother fiercely. Not just for her guidance, but for the warmth she had baked into this place. Her dream was more than a business. It was a refuge, a flicker of hope in dark times. As Marcus turned the corner, his gaze caught a figure huddled against the brick wall. An old woman, sitting hunched on a cold stone bench, her thin frame enveloped in layers of dark, utilitarian clothing that, while faded and well-worn from countless washes, offered little true warmth against the biting wind. Her skin was pale and finely creased with age and the harsh elements, her hands trembling visibly as they clutched a battered ancient suitcase placed carefully beside her, with a faded, tightly bound cloth bundle resting on her lap. Marcus's heart clenched. His mind raced, torn between fear and compassion. He was barely holding on himself, the thought of adding another burden a heavy weight. Yet beneath the fear, something deeper stirred. A lesson from years ago, whispered in his grandmother's voice. Kindness isn't just given when it's easy, Marcus. It's what keeps the world alive. He pictured her, her kind eyes, her weathered hands always ready to offer comfort. This diner, her legacy, was meant for more than just survival. It was meant to be a refuge, a beacon of that very kindness. Leaving this woman meant leaving her to certain danger, a thought his soul simply couldn't bear. He stepped forward gently, voice low but sure. "Ma'am, are you all right? Can I help you?" Her eyes lifted, meeting his with quiet gratitude, but also hesitation. Ruth's breath hitched slightly, a flicker of wariness crossing her face. The years had taught her caution, and the kindness of a stranger was a fragile thing to trust. She looked down, clutching the cloth bundle tighter, as if holding her defenses close. Marcus softened his voice. "You don't have to decide now, but please, come with me. There's warmth inside, you won't be alone." Slowly, almost reluctantly, Ruth reached out and took his offered arm. Her grip was weak but trusting, a fragile lifeline extended across the cold night. Supporting her carefully, he helped her to her feet. Her steps were slow, but with Marcus beside her, steady and calm, she moved toward the diner. The neon sign buzzed softly, casting a pale glow as they walked together through the quiet night. The small diner glowed softly under the flickering lights of a worn stove, its golden warmth contrasting sharply with the biting cold outside. The air was thick with the comforting aroma of simmering broth and fresh bread, a sturdy shield against the harsh world beyond the walls. Marcus ladled thick, fragrant soup into a chipped bowl, the rich scent weaving a spell of home and hope. He gently guided the old woman across the room, her frail frame trembling beneath threadbare layers. Settling her near the stove's embracing warmth, he watched her shiver as she wrapped her thin hands around the warm bowl. The flickering firelight from the stove danced in her eyes, tiny sparks of warmth igniting in the cold darkness of her face. Kneeling beside her, Marcus lowered his voice to a soft murmur, his tone imbued with genuine concern. "Excuse me, ma'am. What's your name?" Her eyes, clouded but clear in that moment, met his. "Ruth," she whispered, the sound as small as a wispy breath, seemingly pulled from the depths of a forgotten realm. That simple exchange shifted something. Ruth was no longer a nameless figure in the cold. She was a person with a story, with memories, with pain and hope. Marcus felt a delicate yet firm thread of connection forming between them. As she sipped the soup, Ruth's voice wavered, then found strength in the flickering light, like a candle rekindled. "My son," she began, her gaze distant. "He was once a bright boy, full of laughter, full of promise." A faint smile, fragile as a butterfly's wing, crossed her lips. "I remember him running barefoot through fields, chasing bees his grandmother warned him about. Kind-hearted, careful, a good boy." Her eyes darkened as the memory faded. "But time changes everything." The smiles disappeared. The warmth between us turned cold, the familiar joy in her voice vanished, replaced by a hollow ache, as if she were speaking of a stranger, not the child she'd once nurtured. She clenched a faded, tightly bound cloth bundle at her side, a subtle but desperate hold on what little remained. He grew distant, hardened by greed. My own son, he turned away, and his wife, she sided with him. They cast me out as if I were nothing but a burden. Marcus's heart tightened. The rawness of her sorrow echoed in his chest, stirring memories of his own struggles and losses. He pictured his own grandmother, her gentle wisdom, and felt a familiar pang for the kindness that seemed to be fading from the world. He thought of the burden of the little flame, of the unpaid bills and the threats of the thugs. But as he listened to Ruth's story, his own fears seemed to shrink. There was something in her eyes and the way she recounted her pain that made Marcus feel that helping her now wasn't a burden but a necessity, a promise he needed to keep to himself and to his grandmother's legacy. He reached out, his hand steady over hers, the warmth transferring like a silent vow. "No one deserves to be left out in the cold, Ruth," he said softly, his voice brimming with genuine empathy. "We'll take care of you here." Her eyes shimmered with tears that trembled but did not fall. Ruth felt the warmth from Marcus's hand, a warmth that had been absent from her life for too long. The icy grip on her heart seemed to begin to melt, revealing a deep sorrow but also a fragile flicker of hope. She was accustomed to coldness and rejection, but this gesture, these words, were something entirely new. An unconditional acceptance she thought she would never find again. For a moment, The years of loneliness and pain softened under the gentle light of human kindness, like ice dissolving under the warm sun. Later, in the small storeroom behind the diner, Marcus spread a worn mattress on the floor and covered it with a threadbare blanket. Ruth watched from the doorway, her fragile figure silhouetted against the pale glow of the main room. In Marcus's mind, preparing a sleeping place for Ruth was not just an act of charity, but a concrete way to reaffirm the value of the little flame, a sanctuary for lost souls, just as his grandmother had wished. The soft crackling of the stove seeped through the walls, mixing with the quiet night outside. A faint piano melody hummed gently in the background, mirroring the fragile hope blossoming between two weary souls. "You'll be safe here tonight," Marcus whispered, his eyes conveying profound reassurance. Ruth's lips trembled, a tear tracing a slow path down her cheek. Though weathered and worn by life's storms, a quiet strength shone in her posture, a promise to endure, to hold on. Her hand, even as it trembled, still unconsciously clutched the old cloth bundle resting beside her, a last precious possession guarded fiercely through years of hardship. After ensuring Ruth was settled, Marcus quietly left the storeroom and walked through the silent diner to the small apartment tucked behind it. The familiar cold bite of the alley was replaced by the stale, warm air of his own humble space. He shrugged off his jacket and sank onto his small, creaking cot. He was bone-tired, the exhaustion of the day and weeks of worry finally catching up to him. Yet as he lay there, staring at the faint cracks in the ceiling, a profound sense of quiet satisfaction settled over him. The image of Ruth's trembling hands, now clasping a warm bowl of soup, brought a gentle smile to his lips. His own troubles with debts and the looming threat of losing the little flame still lingered, a dull ache beneath the surface, but for the first time in a long while, they didn't consume him. Tonight, he had done something good. He had upheld his grandmother's legacy not just by keeping the diner open, but by extending its warmth to someone truly in need. The weight in his chest felt different now, lighter, tinged with a quiet pride. He closed his eyes, the image of Ruth safe and warm in the next room, and drifted off to sleep, a rare sense of peace settling over his weary soul. The little flame, his grandmother's dream, felt a little brighter tonight. The first light of dawn was a hesitant whisper, filtering through the diner's front windows. Dust motes, tiny dancers, shimmered in the gentle rays, momentarily turning the stale air into something ethereal. The faint aroma of yesterday's coffee still lingered, but a new, cleaner scent began to emerge. Marcus arrived at the little flame as he did every morning, the jingle of his keys echoing in the quiet street. Despite the weeks of dwindling customers and mounting debt, the ritual of opening the diner remained, a stubborn anchor in his tumultuous life. He pushed open the door, expecting the usual silence, but was met instead by a soft, rhythmic, sweeping sound. He paused, then stepped inside, his eyes widening in utter surprise. Ruth was already there, moving with a quiet diligence. Her back was slightly bent, but her movements were steady as she swept the floor with a worn broom, tidying the deserted booths. A profound sense of gratitude, mixed with a touch of tender concern, bloomed in Marcus's chest. He watched her for a beat, a silent acknowledgement of her unexpected kindness, then turned to the small kitchen, preparing a fresh steaming bowl of oatmeal for her, adding a generous splash of milk from his own meager supply. He laid it before her at the counter, a silent offering. Later, as the diner remained empty of customers, the only sound was the soft clatter of Marcus sorting through a stack of envelopes. He sat at a small table, a crumpled utility bill in one hand, his gaze fixed on the daunting numbers. A close-up shot revealed the angry red digits, a stark reminder of the looming deadlines. He picked up his phone, his thumb hovering over the dial pad. Hope, thin and fragile, flickered in his eyes as he punched in a number, waiting for a connection. The phone rang, then clicked. He listened, his shoulders gradually slumping as one friend after another offered apologies and strained excuses. Each polite refusal was a fresh stab, deflating the thin hope he clung to. He tried a few more, each attempt leaving him colder than the last. Finally, with a long, weary sigh that seemed to carry the weight of all his mounting failures, he ended the call and let the phone drop onto the table. Despair, cold and heavy, settled over him, leaving him feeling utterly defeated. Ruth, sitting nearby, her hands gently smoothing the faded cloth of her bundle, looked up. Her eyes, filled with an intuitive understanding, settled on Marcus. "Is everything all right, dear?" she asked, her voice soft. Marcus hesitated, then the words spilled out, raw with the frustration he'd been carrying. "These bills, Ruth, I don't know how I'm going to manage. They're due tomorrow." He gestured vaguely at the stack. "Business has been so slow. I've tried calling everyone I know, but no one can help." He swallowed hard, the bitterness of the admission catching in his throat. "The diner, it's barely holding on. It feels like I'm losing everything. We're on the verge of bankruptcy." Ruth listened in silence, her gaze unwavering, full of profound empathy. Her hand unconsciously stroked the old cloth bundle resting in her lap, a silent comfort. The only sounds were the soft hum of the refrigeration unit and Marcus's ragged breathing. "Maybe things will get better, child," Ruth finally offered, her voice gentle, a quiet anchor in the rising tide of his despair. "Sometimes the darkest hour is just before the dawn." Later that morning, something unexpected happened. The bell above the door chimed, then chimed again, and again. Luckily, more customers than usual trickled into the little flame. Old regulars, some new faces, perhaps drawn by the quiet warmth emanating from the diner, filled a few more tables than recent weeks had seen. Marcus moved with a renewed, albeit fragile energy, serving coffee and plates of eggs, the clatter of cutlery a welcome sound. A thin thread of hope, almost forgotten, began to weave its way through the day. The afternoon at the little flame was a rare delight. The diner, often quiet, was now bustling with a cheerful energy. Laughter mingled with the clatter of plates and the gentle hum of conversations. Marcus moved effortlessly between tables, a genuine smile gracing his lips as he served steaming mugs of coffee and slices of pie. The unexpected morning rush had carried through, and a sense of fragile hope, stronger than any he'd felt in weeks, filled the air. In the small kitchen, Ruth, her movements surprisingly spry, was busy. She had insisted on helping, her eyes twinkling as she kneaded dough for small, delicate pastries, a surprise treat for the customers. The sweet aroma of cinnamon and sugar began to drift into the main dining area, adding another layer to the cozy atmosphere. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the little flame truly lived up to its name, glowing with warmth and light. Suddenly, the cheerful buzz shattered. The front door was slammed open with a violent crash, reverberating through the entire diner. Every head snapped up. A group of 3 men burst inside. They were a rough-looking bunch, a patchwork of cheap tattoos peeking from under their worn clothes. One was short and wiry, his eyes darting menacingly at the customers, while the other was heavyset, his knuckles scarred and thick, a cruel grin spreading across his face as he surveyed the room. They moved with an unsettling, synchronized menace, flanking their leader. Their heavy boots echoed ominously against the worn floorboards, cutting through the happy chatter like a knife. Having kept a low profile for weeks, their periodic surveillance had been keen to notice any shift in the diner's usual quiet. The sudden bustling activity was all the signal they needed to collect. The tallest among them, clearly the leader, was a formidable figure. His shoulders were impossibly broad, stretching the seams of a cheap, ill-fitting suit jacket that did little to hide the bulk underneath. A scar, thin and white, slashed from his left eyebrow down to his cheekbone, giving his already menacing glare a permanent, chilling twist. His hair was slicked back, revealing a high, cruel forehead. He wore a sneer that twisted his lips, an expression of utter contempt and casual cruelty. His eyes swept across the terrified customers. "Well, well," he sneered, his voice dripping with false amusement. "Looks like our little friend here has been having quite the party. Hope you folks don't mind if we crash it. And let's be clear," he added, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl, his gaze hardening as it swept across the panicked faces, lingering on a young mother clutching her child. "Anyone who thinks about interfering, or even so much as breathes too loud, is going to regret it painfully. Got it?" He stalked forward, stopping abruptly at a nearby table. With a harsh shove born of pure disdain, he sent a full cup of coffee skidding and spilling across the checkered tablecloth before pushing the table itself aside. It crashed to the ground, sending silverware clattering and a glass shattering into sharp fragments that sparkled menacingly on the floor. "Time's up," the leader growled, his voice low and threatening, easily cutting through the sudden, horrified silence that had fallen. There was no politeness, no pretense, just raw, entitled aggression. "Where's the money, you pathetic worm? Or maybe we'll start with smashing up this place piece by piece until you find it. And if that doesn't work, we'll find ways to make you hurt too." Panic ripped through the diners. Whispers turned into nervous murmurs, then hurried movements. Chairs scraped as customers, their faces pale with fear, began to quickly gather their belongings. Some fumbled for their wallets, desperate to pay and leave. Others simply fled for the door, abandoning their half-eaten meals. The vibrant warmth that had filled the diner moments before was instantly replaced by a chilling fear. Within seconds, the bustling room emptied, leaving only Marcus frozen behind the counter and the lingering scent of fear. Marcus swallowed hard, his heart pounding frantically against his ribs. A cold dread, sharp as a knife, twisted in his gut. This was it. The nightmare he'd tried so desperately to outrun was finally here. A fierce wave of anger surged through him at their blatant intimidation, but the sight of the terrified faces, the empty diner, and the implicit threat to Ruth in the kitchen quickly doused their safety or his grandmother's legacy. His voice trembled as he fumbled for words. "Please, I just need a little more time. I'm really trying my best." He wrung his hands, his gaze darting between the leader and the empty tables, a picture of utter desperation. The man's eyes narrowed, darkening. His sneer widened, revealing a gold tooth glinting in the dim light. "No more trying. We want what's owed, now." His tone was laced with absolute dismissal, as if Marcus's pleas were no more than annoying buzzing flies. He raised a thick arm, his calloused fist clenched, and swung it towards Marcus's face. "Excuse me, stop." The word "stop" hung in the air, thick with unspoken tension. The gang leader's fist, just inches from Marcus's face, froze mid-air. All eyes, including the henchman's, snapped to the small, frail figure standing defiantly in the kitchen doorway. Ruth. Marcus's heart, which had been a frantic drum against his ribs, now swelled with a rush of complex emotions. A wave of profound awe washed over him. This old woman, a stranger he had offered meager soup and a place to sleep, was now standing tall against these brutes, risking her own safety for him. The sheer unexpectedness of her bravery, her unwavering stance, moved him to his core. A flicker of something unreadable crossed the leader's hardened face. His menacing glare faltered, replaced by a momentary, bewildering shock. His eyes widened, a slow dawning of recognition washing over them. His sneer vanished, replaced by a look of utter disbelief, then a flash of cold fury. "Mother?" The word ripped from his throat, a guttural sound laced with shock and a twisted kind of shame. He took an involuntary step back, his massive frame suddenly seeming less imposing. Ruth's gaze was unflinching, piercing through him. There was no warmth, no flicker of maternal affection, only an icy, resolute resolve. "So you still remember me, do you, son?" she stated, her voice steady, cutting through the stunned silence. Her words held no tenderness, only the cold edge of a long-held pain. The man, the gang leader and her son, recovered quickly, his face twisting into a mask of cruel disdain, trying to reclaim his lost authority. He ignored her question, his voice a harsh bark, louder than necessary. "What are you doing here, old hag? Still clinging to anyone who'll feed you, are we? Get out. You're nothing but a parasite, a burden." He spat the words out, his eyes devoid of any human connection, treating her with worse contempt than he had shown Marcus. "Don't you dare speak to her like that!" The words burst from Marcus, fueled by a sudden protective surge of pure fury. He didn't think, he just moved. He lunged forward, placing himself squarely in front of Ruth, shielding her with his own body. His hands clenched into fists, though he knew he stood no chance against these men. All that mattered was protecting the woman who had just shown him such incredible courage. Ruth, standing behind Marcus, felt his body tense in front of her, a shield against the venomous words. A wave of warmth, soft and fragile, spread through her chest. After years of abandonment and harshness, to have this young man, a near stranger, step between her and her own cruel son, ready to face danger for her sake. It touched a depth in her heart she thought had long since withered. A single tear, unbidden, traced a path down her weathered cheek, a testament to the profound emotion blossoming within her. For too long, the idea of family had been a source of pain, but in this moment, a new, unspoken bond had formed. Slowly, deliberately, her trembling hand reached down to the worn cloth bundle resting at her side, the same bundle she had clutched through nights on the street, the same bundle that had seemed so insignificant. With a quiet rustle, she began to untie the knots. As the fabric unfurled, it revealed not some meager trinket, but a thick wad of banknotes, tightly bound. It was more money than Marcus had seen in months, enough to pay off his most pressing debts. She took a step forward, holding the money out towards her son, not offering, but presenting a stark, undeniable truth. She looked directly into her son's horrified eyes. Her voice, though soft, carried an undeniable power that resonated through the now silent diner. "You cast me out, didn't you? Treated me worse than a stray dog. You and your wife, you called me a burden, a useless mouth to feed. You told me I had nothing. You, the one who leads these men and preys on the vulnerable, you abandoned your own mother. For years I mourned the son I raised, hoping for a shred of the boy he once was, but all that remained was this hardened stranger, this man who would let his own mother starve." Her eyes, sharp as ice shards, bored into him. "But I had this. Every penny I saved, every small bit I earned, hidden from your greedy eyes. I kept it for a day like this, a day when I could use it to truly help someone worthy." She turned her gaze to Marcus, a hint of warmth returning. Marcus, seeing the money, took a stumbling step back, his eyes wide. "Ruth, no, you can't. This is yours. I can't let you—" he stammered, but she cut him off, her gaze firm, then back to her son, her voice hardening. "You may be my blood, but you lack the heart. Marcus here, a stranger, offered me kindness when my own son offered only scorn. And now," she declared, her voice ringing with triumphant finality as she extended the bundle of cash further, "I will pay his debt, every last cent that you, through your callous greed, tried to extort from an honest man." Her words struck the son like a physical blow. His face, which had been flushed with predatory anger moments ago, now drained to a sickly pale. He was utterly dumbfounded, his initial shock quickly giving way to a searing rage, mixed with bewildered disbelief that she had held this secret, this power, all along. He looked utterly horrified, his eyes flickering frantically between his mother, the thick wad of money, and the silent, increasingly uneasy henchman. He couldn't meet her gaze, his head bowed in profound, crushing shame. Marcus, still shielding Ruth, felt an overwhelming surge of relief and immense tearful gratitude. The weight that had crushed his soul for months suddenly lifted. He looked at Ruth, his hero, his savior, with a reverence he hadn't known possible. A low murmur rippled through the two remaining thugs. They exchanged glances, their earlier bravado replaced by uneasy shifts. They looked at their leader, Ruth's son, the menacing figure who was now revealed as a heartless man with thinly veiled contempt. The aura of power around him visibly crumbled. Ruth's son, recovering slightly, his face still a mask of disbelief and rage, shot a furious glance at his men. He knew this fight was lost, not with fists, but with a truth more damaging than any blow. With a curt, almost imperceptible nod, he gestured for his men to retreat. They didn't need to be told twice, quickly turning and shuffling out of the diner, leaving a lingering chill in their wake. Ruth's son remained, rooted to the spot, alone in his utter humiliation. He stood there for a long moment, shoulders hunched, before slowly, stiffly turning and slinking out the door, unable to look back. Marcus, his protective stance melting into profound relief, now gently took Ruth's arm. His fear vanished, replaced by overwhelming gratitude and an immense respect that swelled in his chest. He guided her further into the warmth of the diner. "Ruth," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "I don't know what to say. Thank you." He knelt slightly, taking her frail hands in his. Tears welled in his eyes, blurring the edges of the room. You saved me. You saved everything. Please," he choked, his voice cracking with earnestness. Let me take care of you. Let me be your son and care for you. Like a mother." Ruth smiled, a true, peaceful smile that reached her eyes. The heavy burden she had carried for so long, the hidden pain and disappointment, seemed to lift. She had found her peace, not in revenge, but in an act of profound kindness and justice. The days that followed saw the little flame truly begin to flourish. Ruth, with her surprising energy and gentle wisdom, quickly became an indispensable part of the diner. Her delicate pastries became a daily delight, drawing in new customers and spreading word of the cafe's renewed spirit. She wasn't just an employee, she was Marcus's steadfast companion, a surrogate grandmother and a cherished mother figure, sharing quiet laughter and stories that wove themselves into the diner's fabric. Now free from the suffocating grip of debt, Marcus poured his entire heart into the cafe. He expanded the menu, introduced new specials, and saw his once struggling business bloom. Through it all, his devotion to Ruth was unwavering. He cared for her with the same tender love and respect he would show his own mother, ensuring her comfort and security, eternally grateful for the peace and hope she had brought into his life. The little flame soon became more than just a successful diner. It transformed into a true pillar of the community. Guided by Ruth's quiet compassion and Marcus's revitalized spirit, they established a pay-it-forward board near the entrance. Here, customers could prepay for meals, a simple gesture echoing the kindness Marcus had once shown Ruth. Homeless individuals found warmth, a hot meal, and a friendly face during cold evenings, no questions asked. They even began offering small, flexible part-time jobs to other struggling residents, single parents, young people needing a fresh start, giving them a chance to get back on their feet. The diner became a safe haven, a vibrant gathering place where people from all walks of life felt welcomed, valued, and genuinely cared for. The little flame, once a flickering echo of a dream, had finally become a radiant hub of warmth and community. It was a place where kindness blossomed, where an old woman found a new home and a young man found his purpose. Goodness and justice not only survived but thrived here, proving the enduring value of simple human decency in a world often too cold. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.